The Habs have an insanely important deadline coming up very soon regarding Juraj Slafkovsky. We'll be talking a bit about that, plus a TSN insider has revealed what he believes Joel Edmundson will fetch at the trade deadline for the Montreal Canadiens. We'll be talking about all that and more on this edition of Habs Digest. Hello, bonjour, ahoy, and welcome to today's news edition of Habs Digest. I'm your host, Josh Gosse, alongside my co-host, Jesse Poirier. And very quick before we get into the video, quick reminder, subscribe, like the video, comment. I'm not going to dwell on it too long. You guys have been doing great recently, and we love the support. And the trivia of the day. Yesterday's wasn't very fun, so I didn't include it, but today's, Jesse. The trivia of today, on January 4th, 1975, what defenseman had 1 goal and 4 assists in the Canadiens' 10-0 win over the Capitals? 1 goal, 4 assists, January 4th, 1975, a defenseman. We'll reveal the answer at the end of today's video. First topic today, we got something really important, something that kind of has flown under the radar, and it has to do with Juraj Slafkovsky. Now, if you guys aren't aware, contracts and, years accrued in the NHL all depend on a certain number of games. If you remember early in the season, we had that 9-game deadline where if Slafkovsky played under 9 games in the NHL, his salary wouldn't count towards Montreal's cap, and we'd save a lot of money long term. But now we have a different deadline coming up. Jesse, we've heard today, we knew this from the start, but it's something that we should remind all Habs fans. If Slafkovsky remains on the Canadiens roster for the next 2 games, he will be 1 year closer to being a UFA, seeing as 40 games count as an accrued season. He's only played 33, but he's been injured and suspended, and they all count towards the 40-game limit. So basically, if he plays or is at least on the roster for the next 2 games, that's 1 year closer to being a UFA. Jesse, I guess the big question is now, do you think we should send him down to avoid this year accrued, or do we say just leave him up because, we just want to see him develop as much as possible?
I think they will send him down, but not for the reason of keeping another year of his rights, essentially. I think that, within, I could see it in the next foreseeable future just for himself being sent down. As Josh, as we've spoken about on the cast before, is we were both advocates of him kind of staying up for the full year, but that was kind of with the intention that, okay, we'll play him on the 4th and 3rd line for first couple of weeks, first month or 2, but now we're really starting to get in the season, and we're still seeing him on that 3rd or 4th line. And I have to say, Josh, I was so disappointed when I'm looking at the lineups for the game against Nashville the other night and seeing him on that 4th line. I think that if we're going to keep him on the 3rd or 4th line, that he should be in the AHL and that he'll come back next year ready to play. I personally don't know why he's not on the 2nd line, though, right? Because you have, Jonathan Drouin, who's centering that 2nd line right now, and, he hasn't done too much at all this season. So we keep saying, it's a meritocracy, and he doesn't deserve top 6 minutes at this time. But I personally don't think that Drouin does either. But anyway, until he gets either 1st or 2nd line shifts, I really want to see him in the AHL till then.
Yeah, we've, as I mentioned in last night's video, we have a lot of guys who are playing like bottom 6 forwards who are getting top 6 minutes, and that's a problem, especially when you're trying to develop younger guys like Slafkovsky. Now, I get he's 18. I get, we've all seen it. He's making a lot of mistakes. He's still got to keep his head up a little bit more, but he's 18, guys. These things are going to happen. But at the same time, there are some bright spots. Last night, even though he was on the 4th line with Evans and Pezzetta, at 5v5 with those guys, that line had a 70% shot share and something like a 70+% possession share, which means they were controlling the puck very well. The issue is they only played 5 minutes of 5v5 together, and I'm sure that small sample size, that would go way down if they had played, 10+ minutes together. But yeah, it's very interesting with him, right? There's so many things that could go right, could go wrong with him. I've seen some people say it would suck to not send him to the World Juniors, and then right after the World Juniors are over, we might send him down because of lack of production. We want to get his confidence up, stick him in the AHL, and just see what he can do there, because he'd get valuable power play one time, and I'm sure a similar system to what Montreal has up here. But we have a lot of analysts talking about this too. It's not just us wondering. Darren Dreger actually today tweeted, if the Canadiens are back home, or the Canadiens are back home after a tough trip, see how the next couple of weeks go. But he says whether it's Slaf or other younger players, he could see time in Laval if Montreal isn't able to right the ship. So he's saying basically if Montreal continues to slide in the standings, continues to dive into that tank mode, maybe some of these guys, maybe not only Slafkovsky, maybe something like Xhekaj, especially with the injured defenseman maybe coming back, could go down to Laval. It's a tough situation. But Jesse, I think I'm of the opinion that I kind of want to keep him up here as well. Like, I want to see him on the second, on the third line. I mean, Slafkovsky has played with 13 different line combinations this season, and that is just, if you want to develop a guy, you want him to really fit into a system and grow, it's tough. And I know, he's a rookie. He's 18. He's making mistakes. You can't give him preferential treatment if he's not playing as good as some other guys. But the thing is, I think he's playing better than some of the guys we have above him, like you said, Jesse. I don't know if I'm going to go as far as some people in the comments saying, put him up with Suzuki and Caufield, but I wouldn't mind seeing that. We saw Suzuki, Dach, and Slafkovsky when Caufield was briefly off the ice injured. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on keeping him up, like, permanently second line? Do you think, like, that is ever feasible, where Coach Marty just says, screw it, we're putting Slav here on the second line, ride out the season, see what he does? Or do you think, like, maybe other than that, AHL would be more beneficial?
I think either or. I think he could play on the second line. It's all about development this year. I get the argument, okay, we should send him down if we're losing and not being competitive in games. But I think Montreal's going to start becoming competitive in games again, even if they are losing. I think it's a little bit of a trend right now, but we're going to go back to being in hockey games. We're going to lose because, some of them because we got a young core, but essentially we're going to be competitive, So I think if we are able to be competitive, we're having a good atmosphere in the locker room. If he's on the second line, I am super happy. In fact, I would prefer for him to be in the NHL on the second line. But if he's not going to be, they got to bring him in the AHL, because I'm just getting flashbacks a little bit of Alex Galchenyuk, Jesperi Kotkaniemi. I know it's not the same players. I know it's not the same group of management, but that, these start to come in, right? You start to have thoughts of that. And the problem with Jesperi is maybe we didn't nurture him enough in the AHL. I think that sometimes if you do have a track record, it's like anything. If you make a mistake on something, next time you do it, you want to be a little bit more careful to make sure that you're avoiding making the same mistakes, which I don't think is the case. I think, Alex Galchenyuk, Kotkaniemi, and Slafkovsky, they're all very much different players for different reasons. That's a whole nother video to get into. I'm honestly not worried about Juraj Slafkovsky. No. And I honestly, I don't want any of our viewers to think that in the least. But I think that really, if you're having a number one guy, that you really need to put him in the best position to succeed. And, maybe that first line isn't the spot for him right now, but at least that second line, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, those guys, Jesperi, Galchenyuk, and even think about it, Caufield had a stint in the AHL. We shouldn't be afraid to send Slav down. It can be good for some guys. Yeah, Caufield went down after having a bad start last year, and I don't think his bounce back in the NHL was because of that AHL stint, but at the very least, he got some goals to go. He looked like he was dominating the ice, so wouldn't mind seeing it for Slav eventually, but I'm on board with you. I don't think we should do it because of the contract stipulations. I think we should do it if he's truly not getting enough experience at the NHL level on the fourth line. We'll move on to the next topic, and probably final topic for today's video. We spoke for a lot about Slafkovsky, but we have some other big news that we want to talk about. Could Joel Edmundson fetch a first-round pick? We have reason to believe that, yeah, he might, because TSN insider Chris Johnston was mentioning some high-profile players, are in NHL circles at least, seem to be fetching first-round picks when teams are talking to each other. And he highlighted Joel Edmundson. And in the quote here, he says the best assets at this deadline are mostly going to be asking for at least a first-round pick in return. That goes for the high-profile forwards, but also a couple of defensemen. I think that if the Montreal Canadiens are to move Joel Edmundson at this deadline, you're looking at a first-round pick plus. Jesse, first-round pick plus. Now, I said in last night's video, after Joel Edmundson had another pretty brutal performance, I don't think there's any way we're getting a Ben Sherratt-type return for Edmundson. But this report today from Chris Johnston seems to say otherwise. Do you think that it's really genuinely possible that we get another, unprotected first for Joel Edmundson?
It is possible because there's a lot of parity in the league. A lot of teams are really good and feel like they have a shot at winning. So what does this mean? This means that more teams are going to be in a position where they feel like they want to make a move at the deadline to acquire a player like Joel Edmundson, because he is good in the playoffs. He's a playoff type of player. He is somebody that you want around for that. And to be honest, we know that Kent Hughes is going to make a move for another first rounder, which I think with this draft, it's totally the right decision to make. For whatever reason, Josh, I'm hesitant on Joel Edmundson being the one that I ship out for first. I wouldn't mind shipping out, even if it's a combination, basically whatever I could do without my kind of core of, trading some players to get that first rounder, because I don't know if it's just me, but I could see Joel Edmundson and Lane Hudson maybe being a good little combo in the future.
That is a spicy take. I kind of like that. I mean, the big and the small guy, big Joel Edmundson, 6'4", massive guy, cross checks left and right, with tiny Lane Hudson defending our boy. If it's not Arber Xhekaj, Joel Edmundson's another good second. I mean, interesting. I'm more of the opinion that I'm kind of tired of him on the ice, though. The thing is with Joel Edmundson, like, he's had some bad games, but like you said, he's a playoff performer. His style of hockey doesn't work as much in the regular season, especially since they crack down on cross-checking, which he does every 6 seconds. But, you know, in a playoff atmosphere, having him on your team as an intimidation factor, keeping guys away from the front of the net, it's really valuable. It'll never show up on the score sheet, but you know front offices crave a guy like him. Not only a guy who does it, a guy who has a trip to the finals, a guy who knows what it's like to succeed in the playoffs. I think people are underestimating that aspect of Joel Edmundson. He's on a bad team right now. He maybe doesn't have his full heart into it, but he's a great leader and a playoff guy. At the same time, though, I don't know if his time frame aligns with Montreal. I know he's not even 30 yet. He's not super old. But Jesse, I'm gonna take the other side. I think if we can get an unprotected first, or even like a top 5 protected first, which is fine, from a contending team who wants a guy like Joel Edmundson, I think we got to take it. Not to mention a first-round pick plus, as Chris Johnson says, we got a first and a fourth for half a season to Ben Sherratt. Maybe we retain some of the salary on Edmundson and take a first-round pick. Let's do a hypothetical. If we trade Edmundson and get a first-round pick, do you think we just go after another forward, a good goalie prospect, another defenseman? I'm of the mindset now that if we go after another first-round pick and there's a good goalie prospect, I think that's what we should go for. What about you?
Yeah, in the first round, if we're getting 3 picks at it, I think that would be great. You know, I think with the first pick, you want to go with, you know, Montreal showing the philosophy that, you know, it's try to get skill with one, try to get size with another. If you can kind of get one with each, you know, it kind of allows for, you know, just a little bit more. You're kind of hedging your bets, so to speak. You know what I mean? So I think that would be a great move. Yeah, it's, you know, definitely the goalie position is something that we want to shore up. So, I mean, and there's some interesting prospects coming up. Do we want to get somebody that's a little bit further along the line and more NHL ready? That'd be my only question. But we got to get another first-round pick one way or another.
We do. And if we do, hey, maybe instead of picking a goalie, we package that with another first and a prospect and we trade for a goalie like we've seen before, Dustin Wolf, or I mean a Sabres prospect, like something like that, right? So either way, I think a first is good. We got to get it one way or another. Maybe Edmundson, maybe not. We'll see what Kent Hughes has to say, but I'm excited to see what's coming up in the next few weeks. But that'll do it for this news edition of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe, comment, help us out. We're trying to push towards 4,000 on to 5,000 and more subscribers, and we love your guys' support. I'm Josh Gosse for my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.